Congresswoman Mace. How are you? Hi, good, thank you. I'm just wondering if transit interns and staffers can use the private bathroom in your office? Or if you have another police station, you suggest to use the bathroom?
I'm on.
Okay, I know, but people can use the bathroom. She's trying to stop people from using the bathroom,
You
so
can
it's really
totally use the
unfortunate.
bathroom, you just use that of your gender. It's common
Okay, are you going to be
sense.
deploying your staff around to the Capitol to be checking
Are
people
you
before
going
they
to
enter?
harass me? What's your first and last name?
Am I going to harass you?
Yes.
No, I'm not. But you're a
Okay.
public elected official, so I'm just asking you a
You're
question.
not going to harass me
No,
over
I'm not
this.
harassing you.
Use whatever bathroom your biological gender is. That's how this
Are you
works.
going to be deploying your staff to check people on the way in and out?
Do you hear what I have to put up with? The bullshit from people who are insane.
Okay, well that's ridiculous. People just want to use the bathroom and you're bullying them.
Use the bathroom that you were born with. Use that. It's common
ridiculous.
sense, babe. It's common
You
sense.
should read up on the
It's
American
common
Medical
sense.
Association and what
It's
they
not
have to say
science.
about it.
I would encourage
It's
you
not
to follow
science.
biological science. Go look it up in the
Okay.
dictionary or the encyclopedia.
It seems rare that a woman with the power to affect legislation or with a large audience is willing to be openly feminist, let alone gender critical, which makes Nancy Mace such a refreshing change to the status quo. Nancy Mace is a U.S. Representative for South Carolina, the first woman to graduate from the Corps of Cadets military program at the Citadel Military College, and is currently holding the line for women's rights, much to the ire of trans rights activists, regarding the bathroom. Given that she's publicly admitted to being a survivor of rape and her background working in heavily male fields, it's not surprising that she values the necessity of recognizing biological sex in order to protect women's rights, safety, and dignity. In November of 2024, she introduced a bill to prevent men from entering women's bathrooms, in what many view as an attack on the upcoming swearing-in of Sarah McBride, a man from Delaware who identifies as a woman.
This is Representative Nancy Mace, and this picture looks really familiar. Like, really familiar. I think I've seen this movie before, and I've definitely read this book.
Where the hell have you been? Everywhere I look, you're not where I need you to be. It's not my imagination. Now, where the hell do you go every day?
To the bathroom, sir.
To the bathroom. To the damn bathroom. For 40 minutes a day? What are you doing there? We're T-minus zero here. I put a lot of faith in you.
There's no bathroom for me here.
What do you mean there's no bathroom for you here?
There is no bathroom. There are no colored bathrooms in this building or any building outside the West Campus, which is half a mile away. Did you know that? I have to walk to Timbuktu just to relieve myself. And I can't use one of the handy bikes. Picture that, Mr. Harrison. My uniform, skirt below my knees, my heels, and a simple string of pearls. Well, I don't own pearls. Lord knows you don't pay colored enough to afford pearls. And I work like a dog, day and night, living off of coffee from a pot none of you want to touch. So, excuse me if I have to go to the restroom a few times a day.
As per usual, Mace has been accused of being unkind and bigoted, but unlike many who fall under the pressure to conform and the immense bullying and harassment campaigns that recognizing biological sex elicits, she's remained steadfast in her goal of not only preserving women's rights, but making sure that those who have already eroded it are kicked out. Even more so, she did not make identity or sensationalism into the center of her campaign. Despite being the first female Republican representative of her state and the first to graduate from the Citadel, her focus has been on the general daily concerns of the average American. Unlike many Democrats, she seems uninterested in continuing to coddle those who'd like to slow progress with circular, nonsensical debates on if men can become women, and what special privileges these men should receive. It's a surface-level distraction, plain and simple, from other, more real problems. After all, if feminists weren't having to debate on the definition of a woman in law, it would be far easier to focus on campaigning for protections against newer threats, like deepfake pornography, child exploitation on the internet, and more. Mace commented, "We should be focused on bringing down the cost of housing, healthcare, and childcare, not manufacturing culture wars. Delawareans sent me here to make the American dream more affordable and accessible, and that's what I'm focused on." Mace's past experiences have given her a deep understanding of the necessity of maintaining the definition of woman and female-only spaces. As she noted, "I'm the first woman to graduate from the Citadel, the military college of South Carolina. If some guy in a skirt came by and said, 'No, that's my achievement,' I'm going to be there and standing in the way and saying, 'Hell no. I'm not going to allow men to erase women or women's rights.'" Now, Mace is a Republican and holds various stances that not all will agree with, such as being pro-life. However, despite her personal views, she has maintained moderate stances on topics like abortion, wherein she recognizes the need to balance extremes.
I'm pro-life, but I also understand that we cannot be assholes to women. No woman wants to go to the doctor and make the decision that she's going to have an abortion. Nobody wants that. And what are we doing to ensure that she doesn't have to make that decision? Are we giving her greater access to birth control? Well, no, we're not. What are we doing for the babies who are going to be born who were unwanted? What are we doing about the foster care system? What are we doing about child care? We're doing none of those things.
When you say these things in private to people in your party who are genuinely, philosophically opposed to abortion, how does it land?
On deaf ears. I mean, there was an amendment this week that somebody tried to put in an appropriations bill that stripped out all exceptions: rape, incest, and life of the mother. What the hell are you thinking? Like, why? That is not where the majority of people are.
Without changing, are Republicans doomed in moderate districts like yours?
I think they're walking the plank.
In one interview, she stated, "As Republicans, we need to read the room on this issue because the vast majority of folks are not in the extremes. We're going to lose huge if we continue down this path of extremities. In finding that middle ground, the mass majority of people want some sort of gestational limits, not at 9 months, but somewhere in the middle. They want exceptions for rape and incest. They want women to have access to birth control. These are all very common sense positions that we can take and still be pro-life." However, despite her moderation and reasonable stances, she is being painted as the enemy of progressiveness, embodied by Delaware Representative Sarah McBride. McBride has been relatively quiet on the bathroom issue, but his silence has been overshadowed with protests by trans rights activists who have been proving exactly why women don't want to share spaces with them, with recent protests recording invasions in the women's spaces, and of course, through the many cases of fetishization evident on the internet, wherein men record themselves in bathrooms, because if there's no audience to your autogynephilia, it's not very arousing, and in their crime rates, wherein a larger percentage of men who identify as women are in jail for sex offenses than regular men or women. While there have been many articles criticizing those who call McBride male, otherwise known as being truthful, few stand in support of Mace, who has in turn faced threats of violence and misogynistic language. Because, of course, anything that happens to men is worse than when it happens to women. Margaret Cho, speaker at the Out 100 event hosted by Out Magazine, said,
in bed since the election, I've been so upset. I worked for Kamala, I wanted her to be president so badly. I laid in bed all night, tossing her, what could I have done differently? I have insomnia. And I just, I'm so frustrated with everything. Fuck Nancy Mace. Fuck Nancy Mace and these hideous anti-trans women bathroom laws in Congress. It's just disgusting. They're just trying to bully Sarah McBride, who's coming in, she's the first trans woman elected to Congress, which we're so proud and so excited. And fucking Nancy Mace is just bullying her. I hope that she contracts the most antibiotic resistant urinary tract infection ever and is forced to wipe back to front for the rest of her life. May you never get cranberry juice, bitch.
Michelle Goldberg of the New York Times wrote an article titled, "There's No Excuse for Bullying Sarah McBride," where she begins by claiming, "It's hard to imagine how terrifying it must be to be a trans person, or the parent of one in America right now. As if the prospect of having to use the facilities and play on sports teams that correspond with your sex is some great indignity, or not being allowed to use harmful hormones or surgeries as a minor is an infringement on personal safety or rights." She also claims that Democratic leaders have been far too quiet as congressional Republicans, giddy and vengeful in victory, seek to humiliate their new colleague. By barring her and other trans people from using the appropriate single-sex bathrooms in the Capitol. And, of course, therein lies the problem. It is not mean to refuse to capitulate to another person's religious beliefs, no matter how much it hurts their feelings to do so. It is not bullying to treat a man in a dress and a pronoun pen the same as any other man. It is not bullying to maintain that women have a right to use the bathroom in a penis-free space. Despite being accused of not being inclusive, of bigotry and transphobia, Mace has been clear that this is a biological man trying to force himself into women's spaces, and I'm not going to tolerate it. Her adamant refusal to be cowed into submission has found her as a shared representative of women, a rare one, because the majority of women agree with her. Donald Trump has even washed his hands of the subject, noting, "I don't want to get into the bathroom issue because it's a very small number of people we're talking about and it's ripped our country apart, so they'll have to settle wherever the law finally agrees." No matter what you think of Trump himself, he's not wrong in that the average American thinks that trans issues have gone too far. In fact, it was one of the top reasons why Harris lost the campaign for presidency. 57% of Americans don't believe it's even possible to be a gender that differs from that assigned at birth, according to a poll by the Washington Post. Another study found that 69% of people interviewed believe that transgender athletes should only be allowed to compete on sports teams that correspond with the sex they were assigned at birth. Most Americans do not want to share a bathroom with the opposite sex or to have their female relatives do so. Most Americans are appalled by the demands of transgender ideology once they are aware of it. Most Americans supported trans people when the only concession required was to call effeminate gay men she. But now that there are more demands, outrageous demands, accompanied by outrageous punishments, support is dwindling. Unfortunately, the forced teaming of same-sex attraction has led to a decrease in support for the LGB as well. But that is why it is so refreshing and important to support legislators like Mace who make the distinction. Who you are sexually attracted to is not at all related to wishing you were the opposite sex, beyond homophobia potentially causing a person to believe such a thing. In any case, Nancy Mace is not a perfect politician, as there truthfully never will be one. However, she is a refreshing, shining example of a defender of women's rights in the American government, and perhaps may prove to be a better candidate for the first female president in the future than Democrats have been able to muster. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I am so refreshed, so relieved by Nancy Mace, because she doesn't give a shit. call her mean, call her names, cry in her face. She doesn't care. And I really, really appreciate that she's assertive, that she's standing steadfast in this. And her background as a rape survivor and as the first woman to graduate from this military college, she has undoubtedly faced sex-based oppression and can identify that it was because she was female. And I think that having someone who experienced very specific sex-based experiences is going to be more willing to hold the line when it comes to legislation. I think that a lot of people live in this little blurry area of, well, it doesn't directly affect me, I haven't thought about it too much. It's when it affects you that people tend to really peak. It's when you get called names for saying something that you thought was very common sense. It's when you need the rape shelter service. It's when you want to go to the dressing room. It's when you have the experience that a lot of people end up changing their mind on this topic. They just don't think about it that much. And she's right in that, most people are worried about the cost of groceries and housing and how they're going to put food on the table. They don't want to worry about this very small minority that's very annoying and very loud. Because the majority of these people, if you push back on the slightest, if you made it no longer a victim economy, if you made it to where they were no longer getting rewarded with attention for acting out in this way, a large number of the queer trans population, the type that doesn't get hormones, that just happens to change their name and pronouns and dress stupid, they'd revert back to normal because it's no longer just acting out in the way that you're able to do as a young adult where you're grunge or you're goth or whatever. It's no longer going to be a fun subculture. They'd face real repercussions in everyday life, and they wouldn't be getting the energy back that they want. And then they would put it aside. And to be honest, we have way, way bigger problems. I would rather that legislators be able to focus on stuff like how the internet and social media is affecting overall mental health of Americans, the rising rates of violence, especially misogynistic violence, because that's been a huge rising issue over the past couple of years. But we can't focus on anything that actually affects women because we can't even define women in law yet. We can't say, no, we're not going to give IQ lowering, health decimating puberty blockers to children. We're not going to do that. We're stuck in these stupid legal battles, arguing over the stupidest things because, unfortunately, common sense isn't that common. And I hate that. I hate that so much that apparently majority of the world is full of idiots. And I'm sorry because I do think that stupidity is a choice. You choose not to seek out information. You choose not to better yourself. Yes, there are cases where someone just genuinely never had the resources and they're outside of the prime of learning. But for the most part, most adults, most teenagers have the ability to use the internet very well to conduct research and to read and to try their best to learn new things, but they don't want to. And I'm so tired of that being a thing that affects women's rights. Anyhow, if you guys have any comments, questions, or concerns, let me know in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!